I never thought I'd be the guy writing something like this, but here I am. My name's Mike, and I've been with my wife, Lisa, for about 8 years now. We met in college, got married pretty young, and for the most part, I thought we had a good life. She was the kind of woman who always knew how to push my buttons, bitchy sometimes, sure, but charming enough to dig her out of trouble when she needed to. We had our routine. Work, dinner, maybe some Netflix, then sleep. Nothing too exciting, but it was ours. Lately, though, I started noticing little things. She'd stay out later than usual, saying it was just work, but I caught her sneaking her phone away when she thought I wasn't looking. Her messages were suddenly more guarded, and she'd get defensive if I asked about them. I brushed it off as paranoia. Maybe I was just overthinking it. But then I saw that she'd deleted her recent call history. That was odd. I mean, why delete calls? It wasn't like she was hiding a secret, right? The real wake-up call came when I started noticing her behavior around her phone. She was more secretive. And when I'd ask her about her day, she'd brush it off, snappy. One night I got home early from work because I wasn't feeling well. I decided to surprise her with dinner, thinking we could spend some time together. I called her beforehand, but her phone was off, which was weird. When I got home, I found her closet door slightly open and her phone was on the bed. I picked it up and saw a text conversation with someone named Jake. The messages were suggestive, hot, and clearly more than just friendly banter. My heart started pounding. I didn't even know how to process it at first. I sat on the couch and stared at her phone screen, reading more messages, talk about structural flexibility, lab encounters, and references that sounded eerily like some sort of secret code. When I looked closer, I realized it wasn't just flirtation. They had clearly been meeting up, probably during her supposed overtime at work. I felt this cold shock run through me. How could she lie so blatantly? How long had this been going on? The betrayal was tangible, like a punch to the gut. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I kept calm, but inside I was freaking out. I needed to know the truth. I decided I'd confront her that night, face her head on and get some answers. When I called her into the living room, she looked annoyed, like I was interrupting her little secret. I handed her the phone, and her face froze when she saw the messages. Her eyes darted around, but she couldn't deny it. For a second she tried to deny everything, saying it was just business, nothing serious, and you don't understand the nature of what we do. Yeah, right. Business meetings involving laboratory encounters during our disaster prevention project. Nice cover, Lisa. That was it. The betrayal hit harder than I thought it would. It wasn't just about her cheating. It was how she lied so easily, how she manipulated the truth to keep her secrets. I felt a surge of anger rising, but also a deep, aching sadness. I'd always trusted her, and somehow she managed to turn everything into a lie. I looked her in the eyes and knew I had to do something, and quickly. This wasn't just a fling, it was a full-blown betrayal, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it. After I saw those messages, everything else blurred out. My mind was spinning, trying to make sense of it all. I felt this mix of rage, hurt, and disappointment. Lisa was standing there, still trying to come up with some excuse, but I was already done listening to her lies. I could see her bitchy smirk trying to stay in place, but it was crumbling fast. She kept insisting it was just sex, that it meant nothing, and that I was overreacting. Typical Lisa, always playing the victim, twisting things to make herself look innocent. But I wasn't buying it. I told her to get out of my house. Not in a yelling way, more like I was numb, cold even. I told her I needed some time to think, and she could come back when she was ready to tell the truth. She threw a tantrum, yelled about how unfair I was, how I didn't understand her work, her passion, and how I was just jealous. Jealous of her screwing around with some guy in a lab, please. That was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard. I felt like I was in a freaking nightmare. I locked myself in the bedroom trying to process what I'd just discovered. My mind kept circling back to how I'd trusted her all these years. I replayed moments where I thought we had a connection, and now it felt like all of it was a lie. I had this sinking feeling that she'd been screwing around for months, maybe longer. I couldn't focus. My hands were trembling. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her texting Jake, her smiling like she had secrets she was hiding. The next few hours were a blur. I didn't eat, didn't sleep. Instead, I kept going over everything, trying to piece together how I'd missed all the signs. How could I have been so blind? I'd seen her flirt at parties, heard her on the phone late at night, but I'd told myself it was just her being bitchy, her work stress, her independent woman act. Now I saw it all for what it was, a complete betrayal. The worst part was the feeling of helplessness, knowing that someone I loved and trusted had been lying to my face every day tore me apart. I finally decided I needed some clarity, so I went through her phone again, even though I knew I shouldn't. I found more messages, more proof of her lying, more lies about business trips, work emergencies, and stress relievers. She'd been sneaking around behind my back for months, maybe even longer. It was like a huge slap in the face. I remember feeling this cold fury bubbling up inside me, but also this crushing sadness. It wasn't just anger anymore, it was despair. I felt like I'd lost a part of myself, and I didn't even know if I could get it back. I realized I couldn't just sweep this under the rug or pretend it was a misunderstanding. It was real, it was raw, and it was unforgivable. That night I lay awake, questioning every moment of our marriage, every conversation, every promise she'd broken. When I finally drifted off, I knew I had a choice to make: forgive, forget, and rebuild, or call it quits. Honestly, I didn't see how I could ever trust her again. Not after discovering her in bed with Jake, not after all the lies. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. My mind was exhausted, but I knew I couldn't keep going like this. I had to confront her again, face her head on, and get some honest answers. I had no idea what I was going to say or do, but I knew this wasn't going to end quietly. Thanks to her, my world was shattered, and I was now standing in the ruins of something I thought was forever. The moment I woke up, I knew I couldn't just sit there and wait for her to come home or call me back. I had to do something. I grabbed my phone, took a deep breath, and decided to call her. I was angry, but I also needed to hear her voice again, maybe to get some kind of closure or maybe to push her into a corner. When she answered, her voice was defensive, like she already knew what I was going to say. "What the hell, Lisa?" I started, my voice cold. "I saw your messages, the ones with Jake. How long has this been going on?" There was a pause on the line. She tried to deny it, to brush it off like it was nothing, but I cut her off. "Don't lie to me, Lisa. I saw everything. How many times? How long have you been screwing around behind my back?" She started crying, fake tears, I could tell. "It's not what you think, Mike. It was just sex. It didn't mean anything. I was stressed and he was there and—" "Stop," I interrupted, voice rising. "You don't get to excuse this. You've been cheating on me for months. You've been lying to my face, and I want the full truth now." "How many times?" Her voice cracked, but she still tried to spin some bullshit about it being just sex, nothing serious, and that I was blowing things out of proportion. I felt a rage bubbling up, but I kept my cool, something I definitely wouldn't have done a few days ago. I told her I was coming over to talk face to face, that I needed to see her, to hear it from her, and that I wasn't leaving until she told me everything. When I arrived at her place an hour later, she was already waiting at the door, looking hostile. Her bitchy attitude was still there, like she thought she could talk her way out of it. I stormed inside, feeling this mix of anger and heartbreak. As soon as I saw her, I demanded the truth. I wanted to know exactly how long she'd been lying, how many times she'd been with Jake, and what her excuses were. She tried to deny it again, to downplay everything, but I held the evidence right in front of her face. I threw her phone on the table, showing her the messages, the photos she'd sent, the times she'd sneaked out. Her face went pale and her eyes darted around, trying to come up with a story. She began to spin some bullshit about how she was stressed at work, how she needed some excitement, and that it was just sex. Yeah, right. Just sex with a guy who was an engineer specializing in advanced earthquake-resistant building materials. No less. Sounds legit. Watching her try to lie her way out of it made me feel even more furious. I'd trusted her, invested in this marriage, and she had been screwing around behind my back like I was some idiot who wouldn't find out. The worst part was her attitude. She kept acting like she was the victim, like I was the one overreacting. It was the final straw. I told her I couldn't do this anymore, that I was done with her lies, that I wanted her out of my house. She started crying again, claiming she loved me, that she didn't mean for it to get this far, but I could see right through her bullshit. I was beyond caring about her excuses. I told her I wanted her gone, that I deserved better, that I was sick of being played for a fool. I felt a strange mixture of relief and despair, knowing that my marriage, the thing I thought was forever, was crumbling before my eyes. And honestly, part of me just wanted to forget her, erase all the betrayal. That day was the turning point. I realized that no matter how much it hurt, I had to put myself first. I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay when it was. I didn't want to be with someone who could lie so easily, who thought she could get away with cheating and still look me in the eye. It was a brutal wake-up call, but I also knew I had to start healing fast. The betrayal cut deep, and I was left standing there, feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. After Lisa packed her bags and left that afternoon, I was left in a house that suddenly seemed way too big and way too cold. The silence was deafening. I tried to focus on work, on anything that could distract me from the chaos in my mind, but everything kept circling back to her. The betrayal, the lies, the way she looked at me like I was the problem when all along she was the one screwing around. I kept asking myself how I didn't see it sooner, how I missed all the signs. Her secretive phone habits, her late nights, the way she'd brush me off when I asked about her day. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything, every argument, every time I felt like something was off but ignored it. It was like I'd been blind, and now I was trying to piece together a puzzle that was already shattered. I felt hurt, angry, and honestly betrayed. I'd always been the one to hold everything together, the stable guy, the one who always believed in honesty and loyalty. And yet here I was, blindsided by someone I thought loved me. In the midst of all these feelings, I started to realize something. I wasn't just feeling pain. Somewhere deep down, I was also angry, angrier than I'd ever been in my life. She had lied to me, cheated on me, and then tried to play it off like I was overreacting. I'd trusted her with all my heart, and she'd thrown that trust away so easily. It felt like she had no respect for me, no respect for what we built together. The thought of her with Jake, the engineer who was supposed to be fixing buildings, not screwing my wife, made me sick. But beneath all that anger there was something else, reality sinking in. I realized I'd been in a relationship where honesty was just a word. I'd been fooling myself into thinking we were solid, but all this time, she was building her secret world behind my back. That hurt worse than anything I could imagine. I started questioning everything. Was I just a placeholder? Was I just someone she settled for? Because I was safe. Or worse, was I just a fool for not seeing how she really felt? I decided I needed to clear my head. I went for a long walk outside, trying to get some fresh air, trying to think straight. I looked up at the dark sky, the stars barely visible behind the city lights. It struck me how small I was in this vast universe, how insignificant my pain might seem in the grand scheme of things. But for me, right now, it was everything. My world had crumbled and I was left staring at the wreckage, trying to figure out what was next. Still, I knew one thing: I had to move on. No matter how much it hurt, I couldn't keep living in this pain forever. I had to rebuild, even if that meant starting from scratch. I promised myself I'd get through it. That night I made a decision. I wasn't going to let her betrayal define me. I was going to learn from this, grow stronger, and find happiness again, without her. But before that, I had to process all this anger, all this heartbreak, and find a way to truly let go. The days that followed were a blur. I threw myself into work to keep my mind busy, but every little thing around the house reminded me of her. Her scent, her clothes, even the way she used to leave her coffee cup on the counter. I hated that I still cared, hated that I still thought about her at all. I knew I couldn't keep torturing myself, so I started planning my next move. I wasn't just going to let her walk away like she did nothing wrong. No, I was going to do something about it. I needed to reclaim myself, my dignity. That was the only way I could truly heal. A few days after she left, I started making plans, even though every part of me wanted to break down. I knew I had to take control again. That meant legal stuff, sorting out finances, figuring out how to move forward without her. I wasn't going to let her ruin me, even if she'd shattered my trust. I called a lawyer, got my bank account sorted, and started to think about what my next steps would be, whether to fight for the marriage or just cut my losses and walk away for good. Honestly, part of me still hoped she'd come back and apologize, admit she was wrong, and maybe we could salvage something. But deep down, I knew that was wishful thinking. She'd betrayed me so blatantly, lied to my face, and then tried to spin it like I was the crazy one. I didn't trust her anymore, and I didn't want to be in a relationship where honesty was just a joke. That realization hit hard. I thought about the good times, our vacations, the dinners, the lazy weekends, everything that once made me believe in us. Now it just seemed like a distant memory. Her actions had turned everything upside down. I kept asking myself why she did it, what had gone wrong, what I missed. But honestly, it didn't matter anymore. What mattered was fixing myself, walking away from the pain, and figuring out how to rebuild my life. Over the next few weeks, I started to surround myself with friends and family. I needed that support, even if I didn't say much about what I was going through. I'd become good at hiding the wreckage inside, acting like everything was fine. But every night when I was alone, all the feelings came rushing back. The sadness, the anger, the betrayal. I'd lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I let someone like her fool me for so long. How I'd ignored the signs, how I'd been so blind. Then I started to think about revenge, not in some petty way, but in a way that would make me feel like I was reclaiming my power. Maybe confronting her again, or exposing everything she'd done. I didn't want her to get away with it, to walk off like she was the victim. If anything, she should know what she lost, that her lies had consequences. I wasn't just going to sit there and take it. I was going to do something to make her regret what she did. So I started gathering evidence, screenshots, messages, anything that could prove what she'd been up to. I wanted her to see how much I knew. Not to hurt her exactly, but to remind her that I wasn't some fool to be played. That I'd catch her and I'd use it. I felt this fire inside me, this need to make her accountable for what she'd done. It was my way of saying, I'm done being the victim. I'm taking control, even if it's just over my own life now. Meanwhile, I also had to accept that some things might never go back to the way they were. Maybe I'd never trust her again, maybe I'd never feel the same about our marriage. But I knew I'd survive. I'd come out of this stronger, even if it didn't feel like it right now. Every betrayal, every lie had taught me something. Something about myself, about boundaries I wouldn't let anyone cross again. I'd been stepped on, but I refused to stay down for long. Looking back now, I realize that betrayal changes people. It leaves scars, but it also pushes you to grow. I don't know what's next for me, whether I'll find someone new or just focus on myself. But what I do know is that I refuse to be a victim forever. I'll take what I've learned from all this and I'll move forward, stronger, wiser, ready to rebuild my life from the ground up. And that's what I plan to do. Weeks turned into months, and I finally reached a point where I could breathe again. The initial shock and devastation gradually faded, replaced by a quiet determination to reclaim my life. I sold the house, moved into a smaller apartment, and started focusing on myself, my career, my health, my sanity. I realized that her betrayal, as painful as it was, had forced me to confront parts of myself I'd neglected. I'd always been the reliable guy, the one everyone counted on, but I had also let my guard down far too often. Now I was rebuilding, brick by brick, stronger and smarter. What surprised me most was how much I learned about myself during this process. I learned I was capable of feeling deep pain, but also of rising from it, that I didn't need her to define my happiness. I started going out more, reconnecting with friends, and even dating again, slowly, cautiously. The trust was broken, sure, but I figured I could rebuild that someday in time. Looking back, I see her betrayal as a harsh lesson. It taught me to pay attention to the little signs I'd ignored, to trust my instincts, and most importantly, to never let someone treat me like I was disposable. Her lying, her sneaking around, her trying to manipulate the truth, all those things made me realize I deserved better. I deserved honesty, respect, loyalty. And if I didn't get that, I was better off alone than in a relationship built on lies. I also learned that revenge, in its own way, can be empowering. Not the petty kind, more like reclaiming my dignity, my control. exposing her, confronting her, even walking away. All those things made me feel like I still had some power over this wrecked situation. It wasn't about hurting her anymore. It was about healing myself. That's what truly mattered. Now I look at life with a different perspective. I don't hold grudges like I used to. I still get angry when I think about her, about how she lied and cheated and tried to make me the fool. But I also forgive myself for trusting her so blindly. I forgive her for what she did, not because she deserves it, but because I need to let go of that anger to move forward. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this. Trust your gut and don't ignore the signs. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. And when betrayal happens, don't let it define you. Use it as fuel to become stronger, wiser, better. Because in the end, life goes on. You just have to decide whether you're going to be a victim or a survivor. I choose the latter, and I'm finally ready to live again.